Now that I am in possession of a Sony TV, I finally had the chance to check out what used to be called Sony BRAVIA Core, but is now called Sony Pictures Core, their very own exclusive streaming service to gain access to a massive library of select films from, you guessed it, Sony Pictures. So what is it, who can access it, and what is the video and audio quality of it compared to your typical streaming services? Let's get into it. To start, here's a fun fact, and I am not making this up. You can literally find it on SonyPicturesCore.com in their FAQ section. CORE stands for Center of Real Entertainment. Yeah, take that knowledge to your next trivia night. Now, before ever having a Sony TV in my possession, I thought Sony Pictures Core was a streaming subscription that you immediately had to pay for just to access it, like Netflix, etc. Luckily, I was wrong. It is in fact free to create an account through your Sony BRAVIA TV, or you can access the Sony Pictures Core app on a PlayStation 4 or 5. But beyond BRAVIA TVs and PlayStations, apparently there are eligible Sony Xperia smartphones that you can download the app to. I'm not sure which phones, but if you own an Xperia smartphone, might as well try it through the Google Play Store. Once you have a Sony Pictures Core account, there is a surprising amount of free movies you can watch from their back catalog. Sure, they're not the most popular titles, but hey, I came across a few when scrolling through that made me think, hey, I haven't seen that one in a long time. I should watch it. One thing to note though is that when I created my account, it said I have 12 months free access to this back catalog. I'm not sure how much it is after 12 months or if access to those titles just goes away after 12 months. I don't know. But as I said, it's not like I was really excited about many of those titles anyway. Rumor has it though that if you have a more premium Sony device, like their 8K TVs for example, that access to the back catalog lasts for 24 months. But on top of that, anyone that creates a Sony Pictures Core account automatically has 5 free credits to purchase any title they'd like. Yep, and no, I don't mean certain titles cost more than 1 credit. No, my friends. 5 credits equals 5 free titles to keep in your library. But again, if you own a more premium TV, that could equal 10 or even 15 free credits. I've read different things online, so you can figure it out for yourself depending on which Sony TV you have. And depending on the title and its popularity, some cost $19.99, $14.99, even $12.99 to purchase, or you can rent them for $3.99 or $5.99 depending. One of the first things it asks when setting up the account is if you want Pure Stream. As long as you have a fast enough internet connection, Pure Stream provides streaming up to 80 megabits per second. So yeah, of course I enabled Pure Stream. Duh. Personally, I ended up choosing some Spider-Man titles with my credits for testing purposes because I own all the MCU Spider-Man titles and animated titles on 4K Blu-ray. So I wanted to compare 1 or 2 of those titles for this very video, which I'll get to later, don't you worry. One thing you'll notice is that a lot of these titles have been upgraded to support IMAX video and audio. In fact, I ended up using one of my 5 credits to get the original Jumanji that Robin Williams is in, because I wanted to see what the IMAX upgrade did to an older film like that. Although one can argue in general that IMAX enhanced video isn't really that much better as far as resolution or color science, etc. It mainly means you get a picture that fills up your entire 16:9 TV, which is great in some scenarios. But I completely understand when it was the director's intent to have a wider picture with black bars on the top and bottom. I'm still down with that kind of picture personally. But with the example of Jumanji, it was already filmed in a 1.85:1 aspect ratio, so it would fill up my entire screen anyway. Even if I had purchased the 4K Blu-ray, which has an Atmos mix by the way. Sadly though, I don't own that disc, so I can't compare the two. I'll admit the only time I really noticed a difference in IMAX picture was with Christopher Nolan movies, since he actually uses gigantic old school film IMAX cameras on set, rather than a digital camera that has been IMAX certified, like in Top Gun Maverick for example. Like the IMAX scenes in The Dark Knight, for example. The detail in them is spectacular compared to the scenes with black bars on top and bottom. Check it out again if you haven't watched that one in a while. That and much of Jordan Peele's Nope was filmed with IMAX film cameras, just FYI. But these same IMAX titles also show in the details up top that they have Atmos and DTS soundtracks. Here's the interesting thing though. It's different from the IMAX audio that just recently released on Disney+. Yeah, I plan on going into this a little bit more with the Disney IMAX enhanced audio versus 4K Blu-ray video I'm working on. But in a nutshell, DTS created a completely new codec for the launch of DTS on Disney+. Remember, the Sony BRAVIA Core streaming service, now Sony Pictures Core, has been around for many years now, so its codec is unique to Sony BRAVIA products. In fact, whenever I watch anything IMAX through the Sony Pictures Core service, on my Marantz SR7015 display, it shows IMAX DTS plus Neural X. Whereas whenever I watch select MCU titles on Disney+, the SR7015 display shows IMAX DTS X. Now with that statement, you might be thinking, well, since it's been around longer, is IMAX DTS plus Neural X inferior to IMAX DTS X on Disney+? In my opinion, no. Yes, it is a bit difficult to quickly A/B test those two codecs against each other, but if my sonic memory serves me right, they were pretty comparable to one another. So with these streaming versions of immersive DTS codecs, how does it compare to 4K Blu-ray discs? Well, let me remind you that all of the MCU titles and even animated Spider-Man movies I referenced earlier are in Dolby Atmos when it comes to physical discs. And without beating around the bush any longer, they're better. When testing this out, I mainly watched several action scenes from Spider-Man No Way Home. I watched the bridge scene when Doc Ock is introduced, the scene where Doctor Strange performs the spell to give me a sense of audio objects and immersiveness, since there are a lot of swirling effects throughout that scene. Also the scene where Electro is introduced by all those big power lines, the scene where Doctor Strange chases Spider-Man through the mirror dimension, since those scenes also have great bass hits at times, as well as effects swirling around the whole soundstage. And the scene where all the bad guys go nuts in Aunt May's apartment complex. And in all those scenes on the 4K Blu-ray disc, the bass extension was just deeper. It took longer to decay into silence, which had more impact that way. And the overall presence and attack of any and all sound effects just had more weight behind them. But I will say this, the IMAX DTS plus Neural X with Sony Pictures Core wasn't that far off. If 4K Blu-ray Atmos was your reference, like 10 out of 10. Since you're dealing with several megabytes of streaming audio, not just hundreds of kilobytes, I'd say IMAX DTS was a close 7, maybe even 8 out of 10. Pretty darn good, right? For those of you out there who aren't all that into physical media these days, and you own a Sony TV, I'd say that Sony Pictures Core is worth it, because a lot of 4K Blu-rays these days are upwards of $30 when first released. And Sony Pictures Core is pay to play, so you don't spend a dime unless you actually add a title to your library. Plus, you get a lot of titles that are full IMAX aspect ratio that would otherwise have black bars on top and bottom elsewhere if you're into seeing more real estate being used on your TV. And a soundtrack that is almost there with physical media. Or perhaps a more immersive soundtrack. On Disney+, for example, all Spider-Man titles that are currently available are presented in 5.1 Dolby Digital. No immersive soundtrack to speak of. That and they aren't IMAX aspect ratio on Disney+. Yet they are on Sony Pictures Core. I guess that's another weird agreement between Sony and Disney since Sony technically owns the rights to Spider-Man the character? Whatever. But remember how I said all those IMAX titles on Sony Pictures Core also have an Atmos track available? Well, that's for those who have soundbars or AVRs that don't support IMAX Enhanced, right? Well, when watching Spider-Man No Way Home on Sony Pictures Core, I switched between IMAX DTS and Atmos, and Atmos was a joke. Just lifeless compared to DTS. No bass extension, no impact, no dynamics, just sounds? So that's disappointing for anyone who has a Sony TV, but not an AVR or soundbar that supports IMAX Enhanced. You're gonna be disappointed with the Atmos track. Now, I honestly wonder though if that was by design. Sony and DTS are in cahoots with one another, so don't go judging Atmos solely by what you hear on Sony Pictures Core. I can't claim this is a pure fact, this is just my wild conspiracy theory, but maybe Sony purposely makes their Atmos tracks lifeless when it comes to Sony Pictures Core. I don't know. Because the Atmos tracks on Sony 4K Blu-ray discs are phenomenal. Much better dynamics than the infamously quieter Disney Atmos tracks on 4K Blu-rays. So just to recap, Sony has something really special going on with Sony Pictures Core. Free to create an account, free credits to start, purchase as you please, IMAX upgraded titles with both picture and sound that you won't find anywhere else. Awesome. But if you're listening, Sony, here's where you could really capitalize and win the hearts of physical media enthusiasts like myself. You need to make a media player of your own to compete with the likes of Kaleidoscape. Now hear me out. I know this would only apply to Sony titles, but let's be honest. There's a lot of incredible Sony films over the last several decades. Kaleidoscape just came out with their Strato V player with a 1TB internal hard drive. Kaleidoscape just came out with their Strato V player with a 1TB internal hard drive, and it costs $4,000. Sure, Kaleidoscape gives you access to a whole lot more than just Sony titles, but guess what? Sony, just make a small media player like the Apple TV 4K. Call it the BRAVIA box or BRAVIA station and sell it for $200. Put all your modern chips inside of it that support Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, DTS:X. Put a 1TB hard drive in it to start, but also have a USB 3.0 or USB-C port that supports up to a 16TB external hard drive for more storage expansion. Do you know what the going rate for a 16TB external hard drive is right now? Under $300. That's pretty cheap. Because here's the best part. Don't just give me an option to rent or add to my library to stream it. Add a third option to allow me to download the lossless master file of a movie and charge $29.99 for it. So that way I get 4K Blu-ray quality, or perhaps even a little bit better, and the IMAX enhanced version that I can't get anywhere else. Look, whenever you're dealing with downloaded files, piracy can be an issue. I get that. But come on, Sony, just build some solid encryption into your BRAVIA station media player so that titles only work on it and nowhere else. Any external hard drives connected to it have to be formatted in such a way that it only works when connected to a BRAVIA station, etc. You're smart, Sony. I know you could do it, because you would give so many people a taste of what Kaleidoscape brings, but for a fraction of the cost. And PlayStations already have built-in hard drives, so that solves that problem for those who already own a PS4 and PS5. Think about it, Sony, and get back to me. All I ask is for 1% of the profits for giving you this goldmine of an idea. Thanks. Love you, Sony. Okay, bye. Okay, so there you have it, folks. Sony Pictures Core. Better than just streaming, and almost up there with 4K Blu-ray. Now what say you, good people of the internet? Have you not yet created an account on your Sony TV because you were like me, thinking it was a subscription cost up front? Have you already had an account for some time now? What do you think about it so far? Are you thinking a Sony TV might be your next purchase because of Sony Pictures Core, among the other cool stuff that Sony TVs offer? Let's have a conversation in the comments below. As always, this world is crazy as it is already, so it only makes sense to be kind to one another out there. Don't just watch TV and movies, watch it in near 4K Blu-ray quality through Sony Pictures Core. And of course, always be listening.